How you doing? How you doing? So we now have a much clearer picture of what's actually coming with Year 8 Season 2 Into the Dark. A lot of things got adjusted based on what players said, especially around Escalation and the Dark Zone. Some changes that were in the PTS got walked back, and a few quality of life improvements were added. In this video, I'm going to break down what I think are the 5 biggest changes coming with this new season, with a focus on how they'll actually affect gameplay, especially for PvE players. Lock and load, let's do this.
I'm the last man in the dark zone. Bag full of junk, call it backbone.
Wait.
Piece of shit wristwatch.
Bandidos, what up, your boy Tux with the Division 2. The biggest change this season is easily the Dark Zone overhaul. Who can disagree? Instead of all 3 maps running the same rules, they're now rotating between 3 different experiences. The classic Dark Zone, which is a traditional PvPvE version we already know, the Toxic Dark Zone, which is the new PvE focused version, and a balanced Dark Zone, a more competitive, normalized PvP experience. For most players, the Toxic Dark Zone is going to be the most interesting. It's designed to feel tense without other players shooting at you in the back. The main pressure comes from toxicity and stronger enemies, as well as some lurking hunters. Key improvements that came from PTS feedback, well, the landmark chest cooldown has been reduced from 30 minutes down to 20 minutes across all Dark Zones. Dark Zone key drop rates from bosses and named enemies have been increased to 20%. In the PvE Dark Zone, when you open a chest, the loot is now available to everyone nearby, not just your group. This should reduce some of the frustration around contested chests. Stabilization agents are new and can now also drop from landmark bosses, not just the chests. They buffed the rewards in the PvP Dark Zone to balance things out. Landmark chests in PvP DZs now have a 40% chance to drop exotic components, compared to 25% in the new PvE version. And higher difficulty landmark bosses, like challenging and heroic, can now drop them too. Overall, the Dark Zone, especially the PvE version, is looking like it's going to be one of the better places to farm exotic components this season. And I, for one, am excited about that because I am so poor. For the PvE Dark Zone, it's not just go in and farm. There's actually a pretty clear gameplay loop they're pushing with this new version. When you first enter the Toxic Dark Zone, you'll notice your toxicity meter starts climbing pretty quickly. At the beginning of the season, it's going to feel rough until you start leveling up your seasonal modifiers. The PvE Dark Zone is directly tied into the new modifier system. So the more you engage with it, the better your tools become for handling the zone. Your main goals when you're inside are pretty straightforward. Hit landmarks, open chests, and collect sample canisters, DZ credits, stabilization agents, and exotic components. If your toxicity gets too high, you can head to one of the entrance gates around the perimeter and clean your filter to reset it. Once you've grabbed a stabilization agent and your sample canister inventory is full, it's time to extract. This is where things get interesting. When you call the extraction, you'll have to deal with a hunter. The more players at the extraction, the more hunters, and there's dynamic scaling. These hunters are tuned to be a real threat, but they're also one of the best parts of the loop right now. They're guaranteed to drop an exotic component, and they have a 2% chance to drop the Eagle Bearer or Ravenous, both of which are still highly sought after. Now, if you don't think a 2% chance sounds great, well, I only extracted like 2 or 3, maybe 4 times, and I got one, a Ravenous. Super pumped. So, after you successfully extract, you'll grab your loot from the stash and then head over to the modifier vendor at the base of operations. This is where you donate your sample canisters. Doing so gets you high quality munitions and levels up your seasonal modifier system, which gives you stacking buffs like optimal range, weapon handling, mag size, damage to armor, and rate of fire. So using the canisters to upgrade your seasonal modifiers makes future runs in the PvE Dark Zone feel noticeably smoother. As usual, you're going to have to unlock your modifiers, your actives, and your passives, most of which will be handled through the seasonal journey. Finally, you can take your DZ credits over to the reworked Dark Zone vendors. This is one of the better changes they made. You can now buy exotic component caches and prototype caches directly from the DZ vendors, which gives you another consistent way to chase high-end loot without having to rely solely on escalation or regular farming. Overall, the loop feels pretty solid once you get used to it. It encourages you to stay in the zone for a while, manage your toxicity, and then extract with purpose instead of running in and out mindlessly. And a lot of people ask, will my seasonal modifiers work outside of the Dark Zone? The answer is yes. Escalation and Prototype gear are getting some meaningful adjustments on feedback. One of the bigger points of contention during the PTS was the token system and prototype cache prices. They originally planned to raise the cost of prototype caches because they were making it easier to earn tokens. After seeing the feedback, they decided to revert the price increase. So the prototype caches will stay at the normal live price, which is 5 and 10 tokens. They're also bringing back prototype drops from caches and escalations. Remember those? Yeah, they were nice. On top of that, they made some quality of life changes to augments. Reroll costs are now capped at 6 cores from the 3rd reroll onward, instead of scaling up to 25. And boy, oh boy, does that change a lot. They also adjusted the upgrade costs, so early levels are cheaper and later levels are more expensive, but the total cost stays the same as it is on live. They also mentioned that prototype recalibration is still in development. They've also said there may or may not be optimization coming with it, still being debated. They're being careful with it because they want the prototypes to be around for the long term, and systems like this can really break things if it's not done right. Overall, these changes should make prototype gear feel more accessible without completely breaking the economy. They're making some notable changes to the mutators in Escalation, and this one actually feels like a win for build variety. They're removing Anchor completely, and boy oh boy am I psyched about that, because that sucks. That's the one where the dude is immune and shoots you with a single bullet and catches your whole body on fire. They're also changing Unyielding, so it no longer gives full crowd control immunity. Instead, it now cleanses status effects once you hit a certain threshold. But good news, you can just reapply your CC afterward. Harvester has been adjusted so that damaging an enemy with a grenade or any status effect will disable it. Harvester is the one where they heal based on your total armor. They're also moving Hotfoot to start at tier 7 instead of tier 6, and adding a reworked Variety Pack starting at tier 5. Variety Pack is where you start to get outgoing damage debuff on your 3rd kill, and you have to switch weapons and kill with the other weapon in order to remove it. The goal here is to stop certain mutators from completely shutting down specific playstyles. With these changes, crowd control builds and high armor builds should have a much better time in Escalation than they did before. Season 2 includes a pretty large PvP balance pass with changes to over 300 weapon and gear talents. And to get that done, Massive Studios is running the Gulag slave labor camp. This is the first major PvP tuning we've seen in a while. The goal is to reduce some of the strongest must-pick options and give more builds a chance to compete. They've already made some adjustments based on PTS feedback. For example, they tuned Heartbreaker slightly and buffed Core Strength back. While most of these changes are aimed at PvP, some of them will carry over into the Dark Zone intended for PvE, since the new rule sets use the global PvP balance. Still a bit unclear how much this will affect pure PvE play. I still have my fingers crossed that they'll back up normalization for PvE play in the Dark Zone. At the same time, I'm not holding my breath. On the loot side, we're getting a new pair of exotic knee pads that give 40% hazard protection, which is pretty significant if you're running into status-heavy content, like Escalation. There's also a new healing-focused gear set that provides 30% hazard protection on top of its healing bonuses. Between these two, it looks like the devs are giving players more tools to deal with status effects and for cooperative gameplay without having to completely overhaul the builds. The Caduceus exotic AR is also getting a buff. This weapon gives you healing on crit, and they pushed it from originally 1.5% to 2% and again to 3% healing on crit to you and your allies, which is super cool. Use it solo, use it in group. It's going to be a really good weapon, especially since they gave it 70 rounds. Lastly, there's a new exotic SMG coming with a new climax mission. We don't have all the intricate details and it's subject to change, but it's something to keep an eye out for as we get to the back half of Season 2. I think my favorites are going to be the new knee pads and the exotic assault rifle. They're not super flashy, but they're really solid and practical exotics that will endure for the long run. Those are the 5 biggest changes I see coming with Into the Dark. A lot of the adjustments this season came directly from PTS feedback, especially around escalation accessibility and the Dark Zone. And I know what you're thinking, but don't worry. They are doing some serious things on anti-cheat. They just can't disclose what. The PvE Dark Zone and the improvements to escalation and augments are probably the most relevant for most players. The Mutator changes should also help open up more build options and higher difficulty content. Yes, tankier builds, more crowd control. You're going to start seeing that in escalation. Well, that's going to do it for the breakdown. If you want me to go deeper on any specific change, just let me know in the comments and let's chat it out. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. If this one landed right, do me a favor and drop a like and subscribe. Totally helps. And if you want to catch the next one when it drops, just flip on notifications. Big thanks to all the channel members and everyone supporting the channel. You guys are the reason this community keeps growing stronger every day. I'm so proud. Oh, yeah, if you're digging the music and want access to those really cool gamer music playlists and weekly beat packs, Tux's Players Club is always open. Just hit join or check the link in the description. No pressure though. I seriously appreciate you being here either way. If you're not ready to join but still want to check out the music, I've got a public playlist you can listen to right now. Links in the description. Catch you in the next one. Later.